Are the Jacksonville Jaguars underrated or overrated? Now, before the Jacksonville Jaguars play their first game, I've seen a lot of takes on them recently, specifically on Trevor Lawrence. Now, two of my favorite content creators, Elite Takes and Mr. Andrew over here, both of them picked Trevor Lawrence for MVP, and that really got me thinking, are the Jacksonville Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence truly overrated or are they underrated going into this season? So let's break down Trevor Lawrence's chances at winning MVP and what this Jacksonville Jaguar team could do this year, and could they potentially go on a playoff run. But before we get into it, make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and comment. Do you guys think Trevor Lawrence has a chance at winning MVP this season? And let's get into it. Last year, the Jacksonville Jaguars went 9-8 and won the NFC South. Now, of course, they had a slow start last year. Trevor Lawrence also had a slow start, and then towards the end of the year, they went on a win streak and Trevor Lawrence just started absolutely balling. Last year, Trevor Lawrence had 4,000 yards, 25 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions, and he was also a Pro Bowler in the AFC. Now, like I said, a lot of people are all of a sudden expecting this man to win MVP, so let's see what kind of weapons this man has around him and if he actually can go ahead and win MVP this year. Now, of course, the biggest moves that the Jacksonville Jaguars did to this wide receiver room was last year at the trade deadline. They went ahead and traded for Falcons wide receiver Calvin Ridley. Not a lot of people expected Ridley to get moved, and especially for a team like Jacksonville to trade for him was honestly crazy at the time. Now, this is going to be his first year playing in a while. Of course, last year he was suspended the whole year because of the gambling stuff, and then before the gambling stuff came out, he took a little bit of a mental health break or something like that, like the year after that. So he hasn't actually played an actual NFL game in a hot minute now. The last season he played was actually the 2020 season, where he had 1,374 yards and 9 touchdowns. Him and Matt Ryan was a pretty nice connection, and honestly, Ridley was balling out. So honestly, I like what Jacksonville did by bringing him in. They didn't trade that much for him, and honestly, if he goes back to his old ways, I know it's been a hot minute, but if he does indeed go back to his old ways in Atlanta, this could be a huge trade for the Jacksonville Jaguars, especially how good Ridley was. Him and Trevor Lawrence can honestly really take the next step. So honestly, in my opinion, I think one of the big reasons why people think Trevor Lawrence is going to go ahead and win MVP is because of this guy right here, Calvin Ridley. And then they also have Christian Kirk in that wide receiver room, which he proved a lot of people wrong last year. A lot of people saw that money that he was given by Jacksonville, and a lot of people thought it was an overpay, and honestly, it does not look that bad after last season. Last year, Christian Kirk had 84 receptions, 1,108 yards, and 8 touchdowns. He honestly looked pretty good. I think having Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley on the field at the same time is going to be a really good thing for the Jacksonville Jaguars, especially for Trevor Lawrence if he does want to take that next step and wants to go ahead and win MVP this year. Then, of course, also in that wide receiver room, just for me to add on real quick, they also have Zay Jones, and that's a great guy right there to have as your wide receiver 3. And at the tight end position, they have Evan Ingram. That guy looked amazing last year, I should say. Looked like a good top 10 tight end in the NFL. It's crazy how he switched teams from the Giants to the Jaguars, and all of a sudden he like developed hands and had 73 receptions, 766 yards, and 4 touchdowns in one season. So having Evan Ingram on your team, that's a nice thing to also have, I would say, at the tight end position. Also, they have Travis Etienne at running back. Last year at 1,125 yards, 5 rushing touchdowns, and he had some nice receiving work in the backfield too. Now, personally, in fantasy football this year, I'm not the biggest Travis Etienne guy, but in real life, in actual NFL, I guess he is pretty good. It's just that I don't think he's really going to be like the main guy. He's not going to be like a workhorse back this year. I think with the other guys they got, such as Tank Bigsby, Dearness Johnson, and JaMychal Hasty, I think they're also going to get used a lot. So I don't think Etienne is going to be like a super workhorse back this year, but I do think he is going to have some work still in the running game and the pass catching game. So with these weapons, can Trevor Lawrence go ahead and win MVP this year? Now, here's my take on it. I think Trevor Lawrence is a dark horse candidate. We've seen Trevor Lawrence in college and in high school. Now we're seeing him on the NFL level. And in college and in high school and all that, he was a winner. And this man put up some ridiculous stats. And honestly, I would not be surprised if this is Trevor Lawrence's breakout year. Like, this is the year where he does some insane stuff. And with that Calvin Ridley trade, like I said earlier, I think Calvin Ridley's talent is really going to help Trevor Lawrence and help him get to this level where he's just on an insane level. And I really think he's going to get pushed into maybe the MVP candidate conversation this year. So Elite Takes and Andrew, I saw you guys pick Trevor Lawrence. I'm not surprised by it. He's a dark horse MVP candidate, and especially if you didn't want to pick an obvious guy, honestly, I agree with y'all that Trevor Lawrence should be that dark horse MVP candidate this year, and I would not be surprised at all if he won MVP. But here's the other question. Like I said in the intro of the video, Trevor Lawrence could have a chance to win MVP, but how far could this Jacksonville Jaguar team go when they make the playoffs? Now, I say make the playoffs, and a lot of you guys would probably agree that the Jacksonville Jaguars, they have the AFC South. I do not think the Tennessee Titans, the Houston Texans, or the Indianapolis Colts are going to really compete for it. This is Jacksonville's division, and I really think they're going to go ahead and win it. Now, how many games can this team win, and how far could they go when they make the playoffs? With this weak division especially, I see the Jacksonville Jaguars being a 10 to 12 win team this year. This team can honestly, if Trevor Lawrence with Calvin Ridley really take this next step, I can see them being, like I said, absolutely on fire and doing some amazing things this year. I really like what Doug Peterson is doing at head coach, and hopefully he continues this. Of course, Doug Peterson, the guy who came up with the Philly play in the Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles, that was a huge play, and what he's doing in Jacksonville is honestly truly great, and I love what he's doing, and I think that if he continues this, Trevor Lawrence can also go ahead and this could help him make that next step. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars defense is actually decent. They have some nice players, Josh Allen, Devin Lloyd, the guy that they drafted a few years ago, Trayvon Walker. It's going to be interesting to see what he does. Tyson Campbell, they have some decent players, and I think they have some decent guys, but I do think in the future they're going to make a huge splash on defense. There's going to be a free agent defensive player, a big name, a huge name guy, and they're going to go ahead and make a splash. I saw a lot of people thinking that if Nick Bosa didn't get that contract that he did, that potentially the Jacksonville Jaguars would trade for him and give him a huge contract. I saw that, but of course that's not going to happen. So I definitely could see in the future the Jaguars making a huge splash on the defensive side of the ball. Now, how far can the Jacksonville Jaguars go in the playoffs? Now, this is going to be really tough to go ahead and try to predict because the AFC, it's just so good with the Chiefs, the Bills, the Jets, the Ravens, the Bengals. I could go on. There's so many good teams. Now, last year, of course, they had the 30-point comeback versus the Chargers, which was truly immaculate, and they got close. Not that close though, but they got close to beating the Chiefs in the divisional round, but we all knew that Mahomes wasn't going to go out like that. So how far could they go? Honestly, this year, I'm going to go ahead and say that I think they're going to lose again in the divisional round, depending on who they're matched up against in the wild card round, but I do think they are that good of a team that they're going to at least make it to the divisional round. I would hope so. The AFC Championship, I feel like there's going to be another year. They're going to need another guy on defense before that happens, but I do see this team making the divisional round. I'm not saying that they're going to be like Super Bowl contenders or anything like that. I don't think they're there just yet, and it also really depends how big of a step Trevor Lawrence takes this year, because like I said, this team still has some questions on the defensive side of the ball. In my opinion, I do think they need a little bit more work before we can start calling them Super Bowl contenders. So to answer the question, are the Jacksonville Jaguars underrated or overrated? Honestly, I'm going to go ahead and say they're not overrated. I'm going to put them in like the properly rated and a little bit underrated. I feel like some people don't see that Trevor Lawrence this year is really going to make that huge step, because I honestly see it. I see what Nico's talking about. I see what Andrew's talking about. I'm not going to say that he's going to be an MVP. That's my pick for MVP. My personal pick for MVP this year is going to be Jalen Hurts, but I do like what they're cooking up right there. And honestly, I think that's a good pick, especially if you want to go ahead and pick a dark horse candidate. I would not be surprised at all if Trevor Lawrence went on a tear. So I'm going to go ahead and say the Jacksonville Jaguars are a little underrated, and not many people, I feel like, are thinking about them and how good they could actually be this year and how good that offense in Jacksonville can be this year. If you enjoyed the video, please drop a like, subscribe. We're so close to 1,000 subscribers, very close. And go ahead and watch this video that I made on the Kansas City Chiefs, if they can go ahead and repeat as Super Bowl champions this year, and then another video that I made on the NFC North right here. Hope all of you guys have a good day, and I will see you guys in the next video.